According to the U.S. debt clock, in the time you hear this commercial, our nation's debt will go up by $1.5 million. That's more than $2 billion a day. Right now, our debt is over $31 trillion and climbing fast. The question is, how do we pay it off? One of the most likely answers is increasing taxes. Now think about your retirement accounts. Do you want to pay taxes on some of that money now when rates are historically low, or later when rates are potentially higher? Whether you should pay taxes now or in retirement depends on a lot of things. Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare know what to look for. Barry can help you create a plan so your retirement is as tax efficient as possible. Call 417-200-3500 to set up a tax strategy session with Barry Watts and the WealthCare team. That's 417-200-3500. When taxes go up, will you be ready? Call now, 417-200-3500.
Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
It's time for Watts on Wealth Radio with Barry Watts and your host, Ralph Hipp.
Well, it's been more than 15 years now since the 2008 global financial crisis. Some economists say there are red flags still signaling another possible recession this year. Are you financially ready? Thanks for joining us today, along with Barry Watts, the main retirement designer for the WealthCare Corporation of Springfield, the personal retirement planning firm headquartered right here in the Ozarks. This is your host, Ralph Hipp, and here's our main guy, Barry Watts. Hey, Barry.
Hey, Ralph, I just flew in from Sacramento, and boy, are my arms tired.
I know. Sacramento, California. Has there been a lot of rain out there?
Well, right up in the mountains outside of Sacramento to the east, they've had a lot of snow. The passes around Donner Pass are snowed over. You can't get through. Now, I wasn't in that area. Fortunately, I was a little bit south of there, south of Donner Pass in the Reno area.
Okay.
But up in the mountains, beautiful. I was in Calaveras County. I didn't see any jumping frogs while I was there.
How many of you know the Mark Twain story? I think we know.
Well, you and I may be the only guys old enough to know that story.
Hopefully more than that. Barry, I get to see you maybe once in a blue moon, but I follow you on Facebook and chatting on our show. You have been traveling a lot, buddy, and I'm glad to have you sitting in the nest for an hour where we can chat and talk about money. So
within the past 15 minutes, I got an email from a guy asking me, "Are you coming next week?" And my answer was, "No, I'm not going anywhere next week," because I've been on the road a lot. This last trip, I was speaking to a group of about 100 investors in a little town in California called Sonora. Beautiful town. It's a lot like the Ozarks. I teased them. I told them they were like the hillbillies of California.
Okay, and not Sonoma. It's Sonora.
No, the first time I went there, I was confused by that too. It's Sonora, and they've got about 100 people, and they've got this company that's about to go public, and they're all investors in that company. So they're concerned about taxes, and they wanted to talk tax strategy. And one of the first things that happened when I walked in, it was really fun. This guy comes up to me who is already our client, and he was bragging on my team. And he shouted out John in my office, who's been with us for 25 years, and Josh in my office, who has only been with us a couple of years, but is the front person that you usually meet. And then he couldn't remember Nola's name, but she's been here 26 years. And so he was bragging on them, and that made me feel really good. And then the next guy comes up is one of our clients too. He was bragging on his performance. So anyway, my trip to California was all positive because they took good care of me, and they met me at the door bragging on the service they get from the WealthCare Corporation.
Super.
And I was just really glad for all of that.
Well, if you'd like some awesome performance from the WealthCare Corporation, you can get with Barry too, and his number is 417-200-3500 right there in Springfield, 417-200-3500. Next number, 2024. This could be a tough time, a treacherous time, Barry, for any company to go public. Economists say that we have an 85% chance in this country of going into recession this year, the highest probability since the great financial crisis. What does Barry say about recession for 24?
Well, I'm tempted to use some words I learned back home, but
now remember, this is a family show, Barry.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. So I'll just say balderdash.
All right.
Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't going to have a recession, but you do know, Ralph, that economists, and technically I am one with a degree in economics, economists have successfully predicted 11 of the last 5 recessions. So I don't put much stock in that kind of stuff. Are recessions going to come? You bet they are. Do we have a plan and the strategy to deal with them? You bet we do. And I won't say that we're recession proof, but I'll say we're certainly recession resilient in the way that we manage money and manage our clients' retirements.
Yeah. Well, you have that degree, but one thing you don't have a crystal ball, right, Barry? There's no crystal ball on your desk there.
Actually, I've got one, but it's broken. I rub it every day, and it sparks a little bit, but I can't get any images to come up in it. It's the darndest thing.
Or heck, Barry, I wonder if a lot of the time at your company you just have a magic 8 ball. You just shake it. Will we
roll it over? And
will we have a recession? Ask me later. But no way to predict what'll happen. But we do know we have a lot of worldwide unrest. Gosh, it's all over the place. This is an election year, and I'd like to try to get your thoughts on just the election year part of it later. A lot of people are worried about their financial futures right now as they're watching the news, and we've talked about panicking and the emotions that get in the way of your smart financial decisions. What do you tell people around the Ozarks who want to be more confident with their money and their finances?
Well, Ralph, I'm astonished by how much emotion we have to deal with in our clients and in people who are not our clients, but who are coming in to visit with us because they're thinking about becoming clients of ours and so forth. And I just want to really emphasize to you how important it is that you don't panic and that you not be fearful. Just stop being afraid. Quit wringing your hands with worry. And here's why. 95% of what you worry about never happens. And the 5% that might happen, you can't do anything about it. And that's why Zig Ziglar said that fear was false evidence appearing real. The things you're worried about are a great waste of energy. And so you just need to quit worrying. Instead, what you need to do is have a plan and move forward with your plan. And where that begins is by getting an analysis of your current situation. So let's measure where you are. Let's measure where you want to go. Let's measure if you're going to get there. Let's build protections against the things that we might be concerned about happening. And then let's cast worry aside and get on with living our life. It's spring in the Ozarks. It's time to be making garden. In fact, you ought to be getting your seed potatoes ready because they're supposed to go in the ground on St. Patty's Day. And the crappie are biting. The white bass are running on James River. Quit worrying. Get on with your life.
Love it. So if you've got that false evidence appearing real, that fear that Zig Ziglar talks about, talk to Mr. Watts. It's 417-200-3500 at the Wealth Care Corporation. Can you break some of these down and talk about what the analysis looks like, Barry?
Well, certainly. When we begin to put together an analysis for your current situation, I liken it to looking at a map. And Ralph, a map is absolutely worthless if you don't know where you already are, if you don't know your current location, because your current location is the reference point related to where you want to go. And in the same way, a plan isn't very helpful if you don't know your current financial situation. And so what we do is we begin by starting with what you have in the way of resources. And the 2 most important resources are probably what's your income. Now, I know you're working now, maybe you haven't retired yet, but if you haven't retired, your income is Social Security and a pension if you've got one. And a rent house or something like that. So we have to isolate what is your income and then what are your savings amounts. And if we know those 2 amounts, we've kind of put a dot on the map. Now we know where you are. Now tell me where you want to go and let's build out a route to get you there. Ralph, it's amazing to me the people who don't deal well with this. I had a very prominent family in Springfield. If I call the name, most people would know the name of the family. And this is one of the, I suppose, the 3rd generation in that family who came to me. The lady was in her late 50s. She had about, $750,000 in assets or something like that. Back when she was in her 20s, she had about $750,000. But she doesn't have that much today. In fact, as we designed a retirement plan for her, if she retired from her current work at age 67, she was going to be broke at 72. So it just wasn't going to work. And she's embarrassed by that. And I understand why she would be because she had that money long ago, but life got in the way. And so after planning, Ralph, here was the cool thing about it. Instead of being out of money at 72, we were able to design a plan that will allow her to live to age 100 and still die with about $100,000 in her accounts at age 100. So the point is, you can be on a path that is taking you nowhere quickly. And through rearranging things, we can put you on a path in some cases to make sure you've got enough money to last the rest of your lifetime.
Yeah, to have 100K and live to be 100, and that's one of Barry's golden pillars there, live to be 100 and plan for that. So, Barry, can we also text visit? I've heard you mention the number. We can text visit, especially over the weekend, to plan a visit with you.
Yeah, that same number, Ralph, works for all that. You can just text the word visit. What is the number that you give out?
Well, I've given out 417-200-3500. 200-3500. That's the one.
That's perfect. If they just text the word visit, what will happen is one of our people will turn around and reach out to them via telephone call as soon as they're back in the office on Monday morning.
Sure.
And they'll schedule a 15-minute telephone conversation when we can visit. And we can see if there's a way for us to help you. So just text visit to 417-200-3500.
Yes, indeed. When they visit you, Barry, how do you help people around the Ozarks identify how much of their retirement savings could be possibly at risk?
Well, the better question, I think, Ralph, instead of how much could be potentially at risk, is how much do you want at risk? That's where we start, because how much you have at risk is not relevant until we know how much you want at risk. I always speak in miles per hour because it makes a lot of sense to me that if you're driving down the road at 1 mile an hour and you wreck your car, it doesn't hurt anybody very badly. If you're driving down the road at 99 miles an hour and you wreck your car, it totals your car, it kills you, it kills everybody who got hit. Probably it's a disaster. And so we try to establish your risk in terms of miles per hour. And then, and only then, do we actually measure your own portfolio. I was telling you about the family I'd had prominent here in Springfield come in earlier, and that particular individual, her risk score was 42, but her portfolio risk score was 88 miles an hour. So she was taking more than 100%, more than double the risk that she wanted to. And what she said to me was, well, but I want my account to grow. And that's where people don't understand. Having your account grow doesn't mean taking more risk. Now, it's true that with risk comes sometimes some better performance years, but also comes some worse performance years. And so I was able to show her how for less risk than she said she was willing to accept, which was 42 miles per hour, we could actually, for less risk than that, achieve all of her financial goals and take a lot of volatility out. One of the things I like to do that is fun, Ralph, is have a stress test. Have you ever taken a stress test, Ralph?
I have not, and I am the most laid-back person you'll ever find, so I don't even recall or remember doing any tests about my stress.
Well, when you're
not even when I was doing the news in Springfield, no stress.
Chest pain or something like that. You go to the doctor. The first thing they want to do is put you on a stress test. They put you on a treadmill,
right?
And they'll hook you up to all these leads and have you breathe.
They stick all the things.
Yeah, they're figuring out how is your heart responding as you have to go faster and faster and harder and harder. Well, you don't have to have any leads or tubes hooked up to you, Ralph, when we do a stress test. But what we do is we take your existing portfolio and we feed it into a piece of software, the same software that helps us determine your preferred risk and the risk in your portfolio. And we say, so what would have happened to this in 2008 when the market took its crash if we had these exact same investments? And people are often shocked to see how much they would lose if we had another time like that come upon us. And it will come. I don't know when, but there'll be another negative 30% year. And when it is, we don't want you to experience that. So you've got to build your protections in place now.
Right. Going back to the beginning of our show, we said now that 2008 crash, collapse of the market, whatever we call it, 15 years since that happened. And for the next 15 and beyond, we want you to be financially fit. And with the Wealth Care Corporation, J. Barry Watts, your main retirement designer and planner, is with me on the show, Watts on Wealth. This is your host, Ralph Hipp, Ozarks this morning, and we'll take a break and be back with more and Barry Watts in just a moment.
Retirement planning doesn't have to be complicated. Barry Watts can help you simplify it with his kit. In it, you'll find a copy of his retirement income planning booklet, plus information on taxes, Social Security, income, and more. To get your wealth care kit, text KIT to 417-200-3500. That's KIT to 417-200-3500.
Imagine for a moment that an intense storm is pounding your house. Will your roof leak? Will the siding peel away? Will your basement flood? If your house is properly built and maintained, you'll be fine. But what about your 401k or your investments? The stock market has had a pretty good run the last few years, but is its current turmoil making you feel uneasy? Are you confident your portfolio is built to weather a financial storm? Now may be a great time to get a second opinion on your retirement plan. Call Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare at 417-200-3500 now. They'll examine your portfolio and show you if your investments are in need of some weatherproofing. Call Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare today at 417-200-3500 to get your no-obligation second opinion. Don't let your retirement get caught in the rain. Call 417-200-3500. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk.
Looking to see what Barry Watts can do for you? Just text VISIT to 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500.
This is your host, Ralph Hipp, along with J. Barry Watts of the Wealthcare Corporation of Springfield. Once again, I hope you know that number by heart if you're a regular listener, 417-200-3500. Barry, continuing our conversation here, for those of us who are worried about losing too much money, we've discussed the risk of it, how much do you want to put at risk. What are some of the strategies you recommend for them to consider in preserving what they've saved? And I know one of your mains of retirement planning is protecting your principal, so that's one of them.
Well, it is, Ralph. And I think one of the most important things that you can do right up front is have your first year's income. So the income you're going to need for the next 12 months or so, have that set aside in an account where you can just withdraw that and spend it. And you're not having to dig into your investments. So as we're building retirement plans for people, we've always got 12 months worth of money sitting in cash so that they can access that and know that that's where their money's going to come from. And then after that, if there's money that you want to protect, and most people have a percentage they want to protect. We've got a little process and an exercise we go through to figure out how much of your money are you willing to expose to the volatility of the market and how much do you want protected. And some people protect as little as 20%. Some people protect as much as 80%. But there is a principal protection program. And that is a mechanism that says, hey, if you do this, the worst thing that can happen is you get all your principal back. Now, the best thing that can happen, obviously, is you have some earnings. And so a principal protection program is an important step in that process. And sometimes those principal protection programs may come from what we call guaranteed bank notes. There are big banks around the country. You'd know most of their names. And those big banks actually issue notes that will guarantee you that the worst thing that will happen is they will hand you all your money back at the end of 1 year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever the amount of time is. And so just like we're protecting your principal, Ralph, we want to protect your income. And some of the largest insurance companies in the country will actually protect and guarantee the amount of income that you receive. So when it comes to protecting and preserving savings, one of the first things we need is to identify how much you want to protect, what percentage or what dollar amount you want to protect, and then to figure out which protection program works for that, and to always make sure that we've got your income coming from protected money.
Great. Barry, and we have, before we get to the top of the hour here, plenty of time for you to detail for our audience. This is the holy grail here, folks, Barry's 6 steps to retirement confidence. Where do you want to begin on those and step number 1?
Well, Ralph, anytime I'm going up the steps, I always start with the bottom step. So I think that would be a great idea. But let me tell you what's at the top of the staircase, because there's got to be a reason for climbing the steps, you know, and the top of the staircase is confidence. Confidence. You remember that old TV commercial? Confidence, confidence, dry and secure. Raise your hand if you're sure.
Oh, I'm here. Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, that was a deodorant commercial from a long time ago. Well, we want you to be able to raise your hand that you're confident and secure in your retirement plan. And we've got some steps to get you there. First, we identify what are the things that could erode my confidence. Well, one of them is your income, not knowing for sure if you have enough income to get you to throughout your retirement and to the time that you pass away. So we want to make sure that you've got income, and we call that step, the bottom step, income to age 100. And then the second step that we go to, if we know that you have income to age 100, if we don't know, we have to stop and deal with that and fix that. The second step is tax-free or tax minimized. So Ralph, about a third of our clients fall into the 0% tax bracket either when they retire or within the first 2 or 3 years. And some of these clients are making six figures in income, but all the income is coming from tax-free sources. So they don't have to pay taxes on the income, and that allows them to be in the 0% bracket. And what that means is you don't pay any tax on your Social Security, and it means that you pay the lowest amount possible for Medicare. If we can't get you to the 0% tax bracket, we want to get you to the lowest bracket possible, which currently is 10%. And here's why. The government says, and it's not just the government, there are any number of independent studies that say that tax rates are going to have to double over the next 10 to 15 years. And so if tax rates double and you're currently paying about 24% in tax, well, that means you're going to be paying 48% in tax. That's a bad day in the Ozarks. If we can get you down to 10% and tax rates double, then maybe you wind up paying 20%. It's probably where you're at now, or maybe a little bit less. And that's something people are comfortable with. So that's the second step. First is income to age 100. Second one is tax-free or tax minimized. Third step, principal protection. We just talked about that a moment ago, Ralph, about the importance of having a portion of your savings set aside so that a negative stock market can't affect it. The worst experience you can have is just to get zero return. The fourth step in the process is where we do our Medicare and long-term care planning. I'm astonished at the number of people we see who don't know that they have to pay for Medicare. Listen to me, you have to pay for Medicare. And you're like, well, I know that, but I already paid for it. No. When you turn 65 and you go on Medicare, you're going to start paying for that Medicare every month. And there are 5 different tiers at which you can pay for it, and you want to be at the lowest tier. The only way you can be at the lowest tier where your Medicare cost is the least expensive is to be sure you've done tax strategy planning and hopefully to be in the 0% tax bracket or that lowest bracket. So Medicare planning is important. Long-term care planning. We see a lot of people, Ralph, who, even though we are tax strategists and retirement income designers, a lot of people come to us to talk to talk long-term care because they don't have any way to pay for it. They don't know what they're going to do about it, and they need some help. And we're able to introduce them to some strategies they didn't know existed, that instead of them having the old type of long-term care insurance, and if you don't use it, you lose it, we're able to put them into some strategies that if they need to use the money for long-term care, they can. But if they don't use that money for long-term care, then it comes back to them to spend tax-free or comes back to their family tax-free when they pass away. So those are the first 4 steps. The 5th step is legacy planning, estate planning. How do we pass the assets on to the next generation? And what about the things that money can't buy and death can't take away? Those closely held personal values that are so important to you, more important than your money, that you want to be sure your great-grandchildren know about. What have you done to pass those on in the future? And then finally, the 6th step, Ralph, is once a year we sit down together and we go through those 5 steps again. And we just make sure that nothing has arisen that's changed or created a problem. And so if we have all those 5 steps resolved, then we can stand on the top of Mount Retirement and plant a flag, confident that our retirement is going to get us to the end of life with money coming in every month, the bills paid, the needs met, and with a legacy to leave to our family. And that's a pretty good way to approach retirement. It's certainly better than, being afraid. I'm really tired of people being afraid. I want to help them be confident.
That's right. So if you heard all that about all 6 steps and you're going with your spouse listening this morning, we need for Barry to do that for us. Let's plan a visit with Barry. You can text visit or call them. It's 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500 to text today, and they'll return the call tomorrow to plan that visit. It's very important that we really understand what's at stake with your finances. And we have the fear that Barry has talked about, getting your confidence back. We have some outside factors that can affect all this. Major election surprises. Barry, of course, the whole world knows the next election, we've got President 45, Donald Trump, running against President 46, Joe Biden, and seeing how that turns out in November. We've got conflicts. The Russia-Ukraine is going into its 3rd year, and things like that can tip the balances on our economy, can't they?
Well, they certainly can, Ralph. It's important that you personally know how a stock market crash or an economic downturn would impact you. That's the reason we stress test our investment portfolios. Let's say you've got $1 million in the market and the market drops by 50%. Well, now you only have $500,000. And because you just experienced a 50% drop, you need a 50% gain to get back to where you were going, right? Wrong. Think about it. If you've got 500,000, a 50% gain would only put you to 750,000. In order to get back to $1 million, you need 100% gain. So what that means is a 50% drop requires 100% gain to get back to where you were. So losing money hurts, and it hurts worse than making money helps. So it's really important that you do everything possible to not lose money. And that's a big blind spot for people. I always tell the famous story of the lady who came in with $40 million and she had lost $10 million last year, and she shrugged her shoulders and said, that's just the way it is. That sounds like somebody who has $40 million that was given to them instead of they earned it. Kind of,
well, whatever.
Yeah, we don't do well, whatever here. We preserve money. I had a guy this week in the office, in fact, Ralph, and he looked at me and he said, oh, do you play with options? And I just got the most sour look on my face and scolded him. No, sir. Now, what had confused him is I just mentioned the word options in a strategy we were considering for him. And when he said, do you play with options? No, sir. So he was confused because he just heard me say the word options. And what I did after he had sat there in misery long enough and confused by it is I said, sir, we don't play at anything, and we don't play with your money. Your retirement is serious business to us. And we've got a team that can help you eliminate risk. And if not eliminate it, at least I should say reduce risk significantly.
Very good.
From the risk that you're currently taking. So you want to avoid those things that are in the economy that could send your accounts into a tailspin. The best way to do that is to simply text the word visit, V-I-S-I-T, visit, to 417-200-3500. Do it right now. Pick up your phone. I know it's right there beside you. And text the word visit, V-I-S-I-T, to 417-200-3500. And you can get on our calendar for a 15-minute conversation that might lead us to doing a risk review for you. And don't put it off, because if chaos breaks out overseas or even here at home with these elections and it hits our markets, well, you could be devastated. Don't take that risk. Let's fix it now.
Absolutely. And once again, that's 417-200-3500 to visit with Barry, either text or call. Barry, just real quickly before we go to the news here, just a quick second of when we call and leave a message or we talk to you, how soon could you schedule a visit with somebody in the Ozarks where they can meet you face to face? Would it be a day or 2 days or?
It depends, Ralph, on what the week is. I'm traveling some.
Yes,
sometimes we've just finished up a big class over at Missouri State.
Right.
So we've got a calendar full. And sometimes we have space on our calendar. So what we try to do is we try to get a 15-minute phone conversation scheduled within the first 24 to 48 hours. And then we'll get a face-to-face schedule just as quickly as possible after that. I would say usually within a week, 10 days.
Oh, that's great. So make a note of it. Get that on your calendar to meet with Barry Watts. This is your host, Ralph Hipp, and you're listening to Watts on Wealth, the radio show for Springfield's Wealth Care Corporation. Time to take a break. A little bit of news. We have more of the show to go right after this.
We all want the freedom to do the things that make us happy, especially in retirement. To get help planning for a future in retirement, give Barry a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. More Watts on Wealth coming up.
I'm your host, Ralph Hipp, and gosh, it's always one of the high points of my week to do the radio show with Barry. We all learn a lot from him. It's 417-200-3500 to get your complimentary appointment, Watts on Wealth, and here we go. And wattswealth.com is that website, right, Barry? Just do wattswealth.com. Yeah. Well, for the next half hour here, 4 of the hardest words to hear are, we need to talk. And a lot of it is the way that it's said, but sometimes that's the best way to begin your serious conversation. Unfortunately, a lot of couples and families, they're putting off the tough conversations they need to have so they can plan for the future and do it together as a family or as a couple. getting ready for these future years around the Ozarks as a family through estate and legacy planning is definitely a good thing. Barry, back to the questions here. What are some of the tips for starting some of those tough family conversations about legacy and inheritance?
Well, you have to decide that you're going to have the conversation. And I think the way to approach it is to sound upbeat and just to say, hey, kids, I need to talk with you about something serious for a minute. Come over here and sit down on the couch and listen. And that's kind of a signal to them that this doesn't mean leave the football game on. This means come sit down, put your phones down and focus, because you don't start it that way very often. So if you will start it that way, I think they're likely to engage and listen. And I speak rather quickly about these things. I don't want to beat them up with the subject, but just dive right in and tell them what you need to tell them. Nothing is gained by pretending it won't happen. I have a friend who will be buried this afternoon down in Lawrence County. He died in his early 60s, in fact. And you've just got to have the talk, because you don't know when the talk is going to be acted upon. You don't know what's going to happen. That's right.
And as I mentioned, as I was sort of hinting, it's the tone of your voice and the way that you say it, which will bring the family to you or possibly push them away. So I think you'd have a real good way of saying, hey, we need to talk. What's one of the serious subjects we ought to address with our family when we start the talk, Barry?
Well, Ralph, in my opinion, I think you want to start that conversation by talking about your estate and what you want done and what you have done. Simple fact is, we're all going to die, like my buddy did down in Lawrence County. And by the way, last night we got a text about a young man in our church. I don't know his age, but I'd guess him in his 30s. And they had told his wife yesterday that afternoon that he would die within 4 hours. Wow. And she's got little bitty kids. Yeah, she's got little kids at home. Oh my goodness. So you can't have these conversations too early. I think you want to start with your estate plan. And first question is, what have you done? Do you have an estate plan? If you don't, well, we need to work on that. And then once you've done that, you want to incorporate the family in saying, here's what we've done, here's how our estate's set up, and here's how we want it to go.
All righty. And when it comes to estate and legacy planning, Barry, the technical part of it, what should be involved in that? We, of course, have to talk to your spouse if the spouse is there, and talk to the kids.
Well, I think, Ralph, that you and your spouse should set the direction for the estate. I don't think you incorporate the kids in most cases until you've already had the documents drafted and executed and you've set your plan in place. And then you gather the kids and you tell them what you and your spouse have done and how it's going to go down. And we actually, for our clients, offer to host those meetings. We tell them, bring your kids in. We'll sit down and have a meeting with the kids where we'll go over all of this and we'll explain to them how it's going to work and what they can expect to receive. And rarely do I ever get taken up by one of my clients on that, because people are just not really willing to engage this conversation. But it's critically important, I think, to get it on the agenda and to have this conversation with your family.
417-200-3500. Mark it down. Put it in your contacts. You can text and call Barry anytime. 417-200-3500. What's the impact of your overall retirement plan if you don't have the proper estate planning documents that are already in place, Barry?
Well, Ralph, it's a mess. It's just a mess with a capital M.
It's got to be.
I just ran into a story out of my native country down in Stone County. That's where this story comes from. And there was an insurance guy who came through town, and he sold an annuity, which is not a good or a bad thing, just is. He sold an annuity to this client of his, and in the beneficiary box, instead of putting the wife's name, he put estate of and put the man's name in there. So when the man died, instead of the wife being able to get access to the money, it had to go through probate, because the estate of the man, that's his probate estate, unnecessarily, all this money had to go through probate, and an attorney had to be paid to take it through probate. And it typically takes 18 to 24 months to get through probate. And it takes about 5% of the estate value, of $50,000 of every $1 million, all because I'm just going to say it, some dumb insurance guy messed it up. Now, I have an insurance license, so I'm not mocking or chastising people who are in the insurance business. I value my insurance brokers highly in the coverages they provide me, and we do insurance work for our clients as well. But there are a lot of people who have a license who aren't responsible enough to point the gun, so to speak. And in this case, that's a story of where that happened. So if you don't have some documents in place, the will of the state supersedes everything. And the state of Missouri may or may not have in mind for you what you think would be best and what you would want done. And they're going to take up to 2 years to figure it out and charge you about 5%. So why would you do that when you can, for a few $100s, have some documents drafted that will direct where your money goes? And even cheaper than that, you can get your money sent directly to your kids, your heirs, by just filling out proper beneficiary forms.
Yeah. Once again, as Barry said many times on the show, Missouri has their own plan for getting the money if you don't have the right documents. So, you take charge and you take control and have Barry help guide you through that. With that, Barry, how does your team at the Wealthcare Corporation approach estate and legacy planning? Let's go through some of those details.
Well, first we approach it in English.
Very good.
I don't know
Regular old English.
Yeah, when you get a document from an attorney, a lot of times it'll have Latin in it. And, I don't know why they do that. Ralph, in my previous life, you may or may not know that I was a pastor. I was responsible for teaching on Sunday mornings.
Right.
And I, sometimes when I was a young man in particular, I would drop some Greek words into my sermon. And in retrospect, I think why I was doing that is I was trying to show people how important and knowledgeable I was. Guess what? My people don't think in Greek. They don't speak in Greek. And it was silly of me to talk to them in Greek. They needed it explained to them in English. And so as I've matured and gotten some more gray hair, and I'm 60 now, so I guess we can say I've matured.
Sure
One of the things I've learned is we don't want to use those Latin phrases like per stirpes and per capita. Which way would you like your estate distributed to your children, per stirpes or per capita? And you're like, per what? I don't know what you're talking about. So the first thing is make sure it's in English. Second thing is we try to explain to people what they already have or potentially what they could get if they need to. Meaning attorneys just aren't really good at explaining that. And I don't mean to throw them under the bus. It just happens a lot that people walk into us and they say, I got these documents. I paid several $100s for them. I have no idea what they say, no idea what they do. And so one of the things I want to discourage you from is I don't want you to overplan. And one of the places that we see overplanning is a lot of people go to an attorney to say, I need an estate plan done, and they come out with a trust. And trusts are not a bad thing. I've got a trust. In fact, a lot of our clients have trusts, but trusts aren't always needed. I know of a particular case here in town where an attorney charged a lady $5,000 to write a trust, and her entire estate, including the value of her home, is only $250,000. And yet all of that, by the way, could have been transferred easily to her son and only heir. That's where it was all going to go.
Right.
Without a trust. But she felt like she needed a trust because it made her feel like, she was important. She'd done something good. And her money was enough that she had to have a trust to deal with it. Well, the lawyer was glad to take her money, but it cost her $5,000. And it's $5,000 that she didn't need to spend. She could have done it all for about $300 or thereabouts. So just don't overplan and get tools that you don't need, is what I would say. Always be looking at that askance. And then finally, I would say this: you want to properly fund your estate plan. 85% of trusts that are written are not funded, meaning that the trust is not worth the paper it's written on. Because if you don't fund the trust by putting your assets into it, then the trust doesn't have anything to distribute when you die. So in terms of how you set up your estate, that's the way I would do it. I hope you've got a good attorney helping you. There are some good ones out there. If you don't, reach out to us and we'll try to connect you with a good one to get you pointed in the right direction.
Hey, on to life expectancy now, Barry. And 2 out of every 3 men, they do underestimate the life expectancy of the average 65-year-old man. Half the women underestimate the life expectancy of the average 65-year-old woman. And that may not look or feel like a huge deal if you can't get a trivia question right on life expectancy. But the expectation of it, underestimating our life expectancy, this could be a big problem when we start to factor in the money.
Well, it certainly can be, because if you're going to die soon, you don't need near as much money. So let me just ask you this: when it comes to life expectancy, Ralph, are you above average? Are you an above average kind of person? I'm guessing everybody would say, well, of course I'm above average.
Yeah.
Well, you need to understand that this conversation about life expectancy isn't just a fun fact piece of trivia for when you're playing Trivial Pursuit. The reality is the main source of longevity risk for your money is not understanding how long you might live and therefore not planning adequately to meet all those years. The average 65-year-old male will live another 17 years beyond age 65. The female will live 20 years. Now, Ralph, that's the average. So that means for every one who will live less than that, there will be one who lives longer than that. Some 65-year-old guy is going to die next year, but instead of 17 years from now. But another 65-year-old guy is going to live 34 years from now. So the average is just right down the middle. Here's an important thing to remember. If you're 80 years old today, you've got a life expectancy of 8 years left if you're male, 9 years left if you're female, and that's just the average. Some males are going to live 16 years and females are going to live 18 more years beyond 80, which gets you almost to 100. You want to be sure you've got income when you get there.
Well, for me personally, Barry, my dad only lived to be 62 and my mom lived to be almost 90. So she outlived him by close to 30 years. So, he was under and she was way over. And of course, her 30 years without him. And that was another question of estates and trusts with our family, but very interesting. We'll talk more about the math with Barry Watts of the Wealth Care Corporation as we continue with the final portion of this weekend's Watts on Wealth radio show. I'm your host, Ralph Hipp, along with Barry Watts of the Wealth Care Corporation, and we'll return right after this.
Looking to see what Barry Watts can do for you? Just text VISIT to 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500.
According to the U.S. debt clock, in the time you hear this commercial, our nation's debt will go up by $1.5 million. That's more than $2 billion a day. Right now, our debt is over $31 trillion and climbing fast. The question is, how do we pay it off? One of the most likely answers is increasing taxes. Now think about your retirement accounts. Do you want to pay taxes on some of that money now when rates are historically low or later when rates are potentially higher? Whether you should pay taxes now or in retirement depends on a lot of things. Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare know what to look for. Barry can help you create a plan so your retirement is as tax efficient as possible. Call 417-200-3500 to set up a tax strategy session with Barry Watts and the WealthCare team. That's 417-200-3500. When taxes go up, will you be ready? Call now, 417-200-3500.
Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Imagine your first day of retirement. What do you see? Let's turn that vision into reality. The first step, get Barry Watts' Wealth Care Kit. In it, you'll get information on some of the biggest challenges you'll face in retirement. Request your healthcare kit now by texting KIT.
Welcome back in, and another very informative hour with J. Barry Watts, your main retirement planner, Wealth Care Corporation. Barry, we were discussing averages and life expectancy, and let's talk more about the mathematics here. What's the possible impact if we do underestimate how long we're going to live?
Well, Ralph, if you expect to live to be 85 and you plan to live to be 85 and you spend your money to live to be 85, but you wind up living to be 92, that's 7 more years. If you're living on $65,000 today, 7 years from now at a 3% inflation rate, that's going to require about $80,000 by the time you get 7 years deeper. And so if you haven't planned accordingly, you won't have the money that you need. Now, I mentioned $65,000 today. Well, if you're 65 years old and you retire on $65,000 today, inflation is going to require $108,000 by the time you're age 85. So when you do the math, if you live 7 years longer than you plan to, that's $750,000 more that you'll spend in your lifetime. That's the math, and the math matters.
So let's throw in the math of inflation, Barry. How do you create an inflation-adjusted spending plan for our retirement?
Well, when we at the Wealth Care Corporation design a retirement income plan for you, we make sure that it has inflation added into it. So I could spend 31 years teaching you the perfect craft because I've been doing this for 31 years, or I could just tell you, Ralph, to come on down to the Wealth Care Corporation and let us do the math for you. Yeah. Sometimes I'll ask people, how much money do you need in retirement? And they start talking out loud and they'll be doing inflation math in their head. You can't do it. You will fail. The number will be wrong. Instead, let us do what we have done for countless other retirees just like you. Build a spending plan that boosts your retirement confidence. It's not that hard. It's only 6 little steps, but we know where the stepping stones are. So call us today and let us help you get that figured out.
Oh, you just lead right into it, Barry. I know I'm going to tell you, folks, that number for Barry Watts at the Wealth Care Corporation in Springfield, 417-200-3500. Call him now or call him during the week, 417-200-3500. Well, we're all worried about inflation, even though, it has been over 16%, right now about 3 or 4%. How much do we need to save right now, Barry, so we can have the same lifestyle that we want in our retirement?
Well, Ralph, it's not how much you save, it's how you invest what you have saved.
Okay.
Because I can't tell you how much you need to save. I don't know how old you are. I don't know much longer you're going to live. I don't know how much you've already saved up. So I couldn't answer that question. But I do know that for everybody, how you invest what you've saved is very important. If you have saved enough, then all you have to do is be sure that your growth rate is significant enough that it more than compensates for the rate of inflation and the rate of withdrawal. And that means if you're withdrawing 4% from your account and inflation is 3%, then you need to be earning 7% or more for your account to maintain its principal value, keep up with inflation, and keep up with the rate of withdrawal. Now, you don't have to figure all that out. That's what we do for you at the Wealth Care Corporation. This week, I had a client who came in who, in order to retire, they needed to earn 8.3% on their investments going forward, 8.3% per year. So we did an analysis on their investment account, and we discovered they were only earning 6.2% historically. So obviously, if they're earning 6.2 and they need to earn 8.3, they needed to make some changes. And that's the kind of analysis that we're able to do and show you rather easily and give you guidance on because of the tools that we have available and the skill that I've developed in 31 years, Ralph, of helping people to retire.
I bet, Barry, when you have that complimentary conference and then maybe 1 or 2 meetings with them, doesn't the light goes on, aha, I've got it now, or at least for now. Do they they get it after a few meetings with you?
I had a lady in this past week who said to me, she said, this is exactly what I've been looking for all my life.
Yes.
I just didn't know where to find it.
Yes.
She said, would you be willing to talk to my sister? And my response to her was, we care about the people that you care about. So if you care about your sister and you want her taken care of, then yeah, you send her to see us and we will do that. That's the way it works. We were I told you I was in that meeting in California earlier in the week.
Yeah.
And one of the guys who came up to me, he just kind of almost chest bumped me. And he said, hey, if you need anybody to give a testimonial or put a good word in for you tonight, I'd be willing to do that. And so that makes us feel good, obviously, that people are appreciative of the work that we've done for them and they're grateful. And there was another guy who came to hear me speak the other night, and I heard him as he was leaving tell one of his partners, I'm so grateful that I came to hear this guy speak tonight because I was talking about a lot of tax strategies that they could use. And he was excited about that. So the big point is this, Ralph, we're here to help. And I've been helping for a long time. We help people just like you. Sometimes people are afraid, I don't have enough money. Well, our rule in our practice is you need to have at least $250,000. And one of our advisors can speak to you if you have at least that level of money. That's what it requires for us to use our tools and make them work effectively for you. But we've got clients who've got 5 and 10 million as well. And we bring different tools to the table, but we're always focused on helping you reduce taxes, make sure your income lasts to age 100, and make sure your principal is protected.
Great. Hey, and pass that word along. If you've loved meeting with Barry, pass it along. That number is 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500, reaching out to J. Barry Watts and the team at the Wealth Care Corporation. Well, we've talked about inflation, one part of that retirement puzzle. And what are some of the other 5 big concerns we really need to be paying attention to right now in retirement?
Well, I think taxes are big, and nobody really focuses on taxes very much. But if you don't get the taxes right in retirement, nothing else is really going to matter. So you've got to stop and focus on taxes, and people don't know even how to do that. And every week I have people telling me, well, my CPA told me I should use my traditional IRA instead of my Roth IRA. And I'm like, he's wrong. Your CPA is focused only on your taxes for this year. He's not thinking about your family and your future and about having enough money to last until age 100. So you ought to be doing Medicare planning. That's something that you should focus on because it's a concern. Long-term care planning. How are you going to pay for long-term care? How are you going to protect your principal? How are you going to pass your estate on to the people you want it to go to in the way you want it to go to them, when you want it to go to them? That's the kind of stuff that we can help you with at the Wealth Care Corporation.
Okay. Running out of money. It's still our biggest fear for the baby boomers, too. And there's good reason for it. The projections show that among the pre-retirees, if you're in that bracket, 40% of the people in those households will run short of money in retirement. Barry, 40%, and that's a bunch.
Wow, that's sad if you think about it, because what are you going to do if you're in that 40% and you're 80 years old and you're still living and you just don't have any money left? And we've all heard those stories about people eating cat food. I had a guy come in just last week. He works over at Missouri State University, in fact, and his wife works in the Springfield Public Schools. And their question to me was, we want to be sure that we're not going to have to eat cat food. That's what they told me the mission was. And so we were able to plan for them, and there's no cat food in their future, and that's a very good thing.
That's good.
But, they may sound like people like you. You may work at Missouri State or Drury or Evangel or wherever, or you may work in the public schools like the wife did. Those are the kinds of people we help. And the most common fear those people have when they come to see us is that they're going to run out of money. They want to know if they've saved enough. Now, here's the key, Ralph. Everybody gets caught up in how much they've saved. But what you really need to think about is how much you'll spend in retirement, because it's the spending that drives the answer to the question. If we know what you're going to spend, we can figure out what it's going to take for you to live your ideal lifestyle, including inflation, for the next 30 years or longer. And you may say, well, I've already got an income strategy. If you think that's true, then call us, because I'm going to guess that you might need a second opinion on that. Unless you have an income plan with a budgeted amount to spend every year till you're 100 years old, that's the retirement you've dreamed about, well, then you don't have the right kind of plan designed for you. Unless you've considered the risks that taxes, stock market volatility, inflation, skyrocketing health costs. Boy, it's eating my lunch lately. I heard somebody the other day say you'll spend $40,000 a year on healthcare, and I was like, oh, that sounds high. And then I stopped and I did the math on what we're spending now, and I'm only 60 years old. We're spending $40,000 a year on healthcare.
Yeah.
And we've got insurance. So you need to analyze these things and learn about what your options are to protect yourself from those issues, your options for generating more income in retirement, and learn how to preserve your standard of living even as costs keep rising. So if you'll call us today, won't cost you anything to do this analysis. There won't be any obligation. I don't know if we can help you till we've talked. But if you've saved at least $250,000 for retirement, call 417-230-500. 417-230-500 and ask for your retirement analysis. The strategies we use, they're designed to make sure that you won't run out of money before you run out of life. We're not going to make you rich. We can't do that. Frankly, it's not possible. You either are or you aren't. But what we can do is make sure that you don't end up outliving your retirement savings and eating cat food. And so all around the Ozarks, if you just dial 417-230-500, wherever you're listening to our show, that'll put you in touch with our office. And if you call right now, you'll have to leave a message, but I promise you one of my staff will call you back on Monday morning, and they'll get you scheduled for either a sit down here in the office or a 15-minute phone conversation, whichever suits you the best.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, 417-200-3500 to reach out to Barry. And Barry, we're down to our final minute of the show. Any final thoughts for our friends out there before we wrap it up for this weekend?
Well, always drink downstream from the herd.
Sure.
No. What is it? I said that wrong, Ralph. It's always drink upstream from the herd.
Upstream from the herd.
A lot
we'd
of
be
people
better
don't
off that way.
understand that.
Yeah.
but if you grew up like I did, and you often were in the stream with cattle, you know how important it is that if you're going to lean down into the stream and suck some water up, you want to be upstream from the herd. So I guess that'd be some good advice. I don't know. What else would you like to know, Ralph?
Well, I just wanted to say, I don't know if it was, remember Paul Harvey, whether Paul Harvey said, or
good day.
Yeah. Have a good day. Absolutely.
The rest of the story.
Yeah. And may the wind be at your back, financially and otherwise. I don't know who said, may the wind be at your back. And that's a great thought to close on. Well, Barry, we'll see you again next weekend. Terrific week yourself, and hope you can stay home in the Ozarks a little while, not travel quite so much, and we'll get together again next Sunday.
I'm here for about 27 days, Ralph. I'm looking forward.
Oh, that's great. So he's here to talk with you folks. This is your host, Ralph Hipp, along with Barry Watts of Springfield's Wealthcare Corporation. Do get in touch and connect with us again here on the radio and on the podcast next weekend. We'll see you then.
Thank you for stopping by Watts on Wealth. If you would like Barry and his team to help you make a plan to get to and through retirement, or would simply like a second opinion on your current plan, give us a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. And join us again next week for Watts on Wealth.
Wealthcare Corporation provides tax strategy, tax compliance, accounting, and insurance services through its affiliate American Tax Strategies, LLC. Investment advisory services are provided by Wealthcare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance never guarantees future results. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for information and entertainment purposes only and should not be used as the basis for personal financial decisions without first consulting a qualified advisor. The information and opinions you've heard are believed reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness.